On July 8th of 2017, my bees swarmed. I've been a beekeeper for a couple of years, but this was my first swarm. I was fortunate in that it happened on a day off work, and then I was fortunate in that the bees landed in a tree on my own property where I could recover them. So in this video, I'm going to kind of walk through what a swarm looks like and what I did to recover them and how I hived them. I'm recording this 13 days after the swarm, so I can report to you that everything I did here was a success. The bees were hived in a new hive, a brand new hive with no drawn foundation, about 2 feet from the hive they abandoned. It was the only choice I had. So I wasn't sure if they would take to that or if I had to put them in a hive far removed from the one they had left. I have 2 3/4 acres. I was all the way across the property and I heard this dull roar sound. I wasn't sure what it was, and I started walking around, and then I knew it was coming from the direction of the beehives. I had quite a sense of dread as I approached the hive to see what had happened. And then I saw this huge cloud of bees, and they descended in my cherry tree. And in a bit I'll show you how I removed them. But first I want to take you back a little bit, because as luck would have it, I did a hive inspection 4 days earlier on this hive. The Monday before, I did a hive inspection, and I actually videotaped it with my GoPro as I was doing it. I noticed a couple of things that I found odd in this hive inspection. As you see, there's plenty of brood, but there was no honey. And I even commented during the hive inspection. I was like, where's all the honey? And then look at these swarm cells. I found swarm cells built on the bottom of the frames, and those right there were suspect. But again, I've never had a swarm, and I've seen swarm cells, so I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. But back to present, they swarmed, and here they are. They're in my cherry tree. Now, a lot of beekeepers will just take a big 5-gallon bucket and a brush and brush those bees into the bucket. In fact, a beekeeping associate of mine, when she saw this video, asked me why I hadn't done that. Well, I didn't want to risk losing the queen. This was my first time with a swarm, and I only had 2 hives, so I wanted to make darn sure I got that queen. So instead of brushing them off, I just cut the branch. It wasn't that difficult to do, and it didn't hurt the tree at all. So I very carefully carried it to the back of the property where I have the hives, and I had already set up a brand new hive. Coincidentally, 2 weeks earlier, I had ordered a brand new hive setup from Amazon.com and had it delivered to my doorstep. Had I not done that, I would not have been prepared to handle this hive. So very carefully and very gently, I made my way down to the hives, as you see here in this beautiful area of flowers I have on the back of the property. The hive is set up, and I just shake the bees into it. I have an empty super up on top that I left there for a week just so I wouldn't have to smash them or force them in there as they were settling in. So I put the cover on. A week later I came out here, didn't disturb the hive, but just took that super off. So now it's just a 1 super hive. And the hive they abandoned is the one you see on the right. That's the hive that they left, which was a weaker hive to begin with. I went back to where I had removed the bees and found they were congregating again. So I cut this branch off and again took it back down to the hive. Yes, it was surprising to me that my weakest hive is the hive that swarmed. I also have a very aggressive hive that's 3 supers deep, full of bees. That one didn't swarm. In hindsight, I think I know what happened. I got impatient when I added a second super. The foundation wasn't drawn and they weren't drawing it, so I swapped an empty frame from the new super with a fully drawn frame from the first super, the brood super. And I think what happened is the queen was hitting that new frame halfway through and not having anywhere to go, and she felt confined, and she swarmed. So all's well that ends well. I was able to keep this swarm. Today, 13 days later, that swarm is still there. They're drawing foundation, and the queen is laying. I did a hive inspection of hive A, Well, before I get to that, let me tell you what happened 8 days after the main swarm. I saw another mini swarm. At first I thought it was a cast or a secondary swarm, but now I'm convinced that it was the mating flight of the new queen that had emerged from the swarm cell. There was a big cloud of bees that went up in the air, just like a swarm, and as I watched with dread, they all managed to come back down to the hive. And now, 13 days later, I've done a hive inspection. The new queen in the original hive is mated, and she's laying eggs. And here's a raccoon eating our cherries out of our cherry tree.